the thing that you are the most comfortable, familiar, and competent with is probably the thing that requires the least courage.
I never had empathy to the extent I do now for people who can't visualize their own bigger, better, brighter future because they don't have the self-belief part. Because everyone in the past always acted like they believed in themselves. Like, people act.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. Today, for episode number 1921, Courage Isn't What You Think It Is. I asked Alan today, I said, when's the last time you did something that you were afraid of doing? And he's like, dude, last night, group coaching. And I said, okay. And he said, what about you? And I said, today, we have a client. His name's Marcus, and he is very intelligent and a very successful human and a good dude, very good dude. Him and I have a good relationship, which I'm grateful for.
Just signed up for our monthly meetup.
I just signed up for the monthly meetup.
I saw it come through from the website.
Yeah, very humble human. So I've been doing something called producer episodes. I think I mentioned this, where I go on with our client and kind of interview them instead of them doing a solo episode. And this morning,
what was the best question you asked?
Oh, man.
Because you're the interviewer.
What is something that your wife would tell us about you that you would never tell us about yourself?
That's fire.
That's a good question. Yeah, he struggled with that one a little bit. He said, I'm probably goofier than you think. And I was like, deeper. Give me something deeper than that. It was good. It was really good. It was a really good conversation.
Nice.
But I woke up this morning and I saw that on my calendar and I said, fuck that. What's a convenient excuse that I could come up with to make this disappear from my calendar? Holidays coming up. I'm sure I could finagle something. But then I started to do research and I started to make questions. And I told Taryn, I said, I have a producer episode that I'm nervous about doing. And she said, why are you nervous? And I said, I said, it's a couple things. One, he's a very intelligent human, and that's always scary for me. Two, we're just going to have a deep conversation, and I haven't had a deep conversation like that with someone that isn't Alan. I haven't hosted with someone who isn't Alan in however many years, if you really think about it, just based on depth and self-improvement. So I said, that's a thing. And then the other thing, and I told him this in the beginning, or somewhere in the middle, I said, I have a deep fear of disappointing men. Like, that's my thing. That is one of my core wounds. That is like my kryptonite. And that's one of the reasons it was super hard. Why are you smiling about it though?
I'm in a really good mood.
I'm not.
I always think of these jokes in my head, and then I run through a filter of how inappropriate is that.
Well, you want to say it? You have to say it now.
I was going to say I'm disappointed.
Well, I've become fairly numb to disappointing you. I'm used to it at this point. So, and you respond you respond well to it as well.
I'm grateful for that. I do have a question that I think is wildly irrelevant.
Let's do it.
And then we'll get us back on the
rails. We love
irrelevance.
irrelevance.
But I am genuinely curious, and I want to try to follow that more. Number one, how do you know when someone's intelligent? And then I have a second question.
Oh, man. Went to a good college, has a degree in philosophy. You could tell by the words he uses. Just the high-performing type. Just a high performer. Dialed in, systems. Just meticulous with the way that he shows up. So I think it's mostly those. I told him, I said, for the audience, for the audience watching or listening, Marcus paid us to launch his podcast, and then he ghosted me for like a year. And I said, when you came back, I was nervous. I was a little bit nervous about it. So it was a really good conversation around that. But yeah, I think there's just context clues, I would say.
Thank you. And the second question.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. The next question is, how often do you get, I guess, how does that, I'm trying to ask the right question here.
I thought you forgot.
Okay.
That's why I laughed.
I think I did.
Oh.
No, I forgot. Yes, but I do think that it's somewhere along the lines of. Does he have any idea that that's how you feel?
He wouldn't have if I didn't tell him. Because he also
How
said
many
he was nervous. I'm like, why are you nervous? Same thing. It's probably the same. When I go.
Why did he say he was nervous? What was his reason?
Because he didn't know where it was going to go. It was his first time. I mean, he's putting himself out there in front of his audience, and he said there's nothing off limits, and I said, cool, I want to go deep. I want to go deep on questions and really search here. So that exposed, you're going to get exposed.
I was wondering if you had a blind spot about the question you asked. What was the question? It was about what would your wife say about you that you wouldn't say about you?
Yep.
Dude, that's for a type A super achiever dialed in person. I wonder if that's more vulnerable for him than you think.
That's why I asked him. That's why I asked
Did he
him.
actually answer? Or did he go surface level and then what did he answer?
Surface level
after?
at first, and then I dug a little bit.
Yeah.
But I went in with the. It's hard even to explain. There's certain people when you're doing an episode or you're having a conversation in general, you can almost say why. Not negatively. But like if you and I are on here and I ask you a question and you give me an answer and I know there's a why under it, I'll just say, okay, why though? With sometimes you're not going to do that with someone who is very uncomfortable. I don't know the point of that, but that's why I went in with questions that I intended on trying to make him uncomfortable with. That was my goal. My goal was to make him uncomfortable and to go deep. That was 100%.
Did he know that was your goal?
I would say,
again, this is about courage. So you both needed courage.
I would say to a degree. Yeah.
And this is one thing that when Kev asked, when was the last time you were scared? I think the old me, many, many, many years ago, wouldn't have self-identified as someone who is scared of something like group coaching. But I've now become more aware of, I think that we're both scared of group coaching, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
And it's not like a level 10 fear. I wasn't freaking out.
Mm.
But where was it on the Richter scale for you today, the thing you were afraid of?
I don't know, probably like a 6.
Okay. Last night for me, prior to it, was probably like a 4. And then during it, there was a few moments of 6 or 7.
Yeah.
For sure. But what I was afraid of, and this is kind of my point, because Marcus probably is afraid of it too, but for a different reason. And the reason I was afraid of group coaching is, I've never presented this before, but it's not that. It's, I told everyone in group coaching, group 16, shout out to all of you, if any of you are watching or listening. I've never presented this before. You have all experienced and seen NLU from the outside in. This is going to be how we did it from the inside out. And for whatever reason, that's extremely scary for me. Because I think it's going to highlight how different we are from the inside out. Whereas from the outside in, it might appear like we're just a couple podcasters. But from the inside out, I mean, the grand design, for lack of better phrasing, of why we do what we do and how we go about it in terms of the reverse engineering, I felt very exposed.
I think that's a good way to put. I think it's a good word to use. I also had another moment where that's the thing. I've been labeled as the questions guy who's good at interviewing. And now it's like, okay, I got to make sure I over deliver here. So I'm doing prep for this, as is always good, but there's that piece too of there's a lot of pressure when people label you externally as something. There's a lot of pressure to, at least for me, to maintain that internal identity of what people say you are. It's a really challenging thing.
I have the opposite experience, and that makes sense with you and I being on different ends of the drive to 5. For me, I'm not concerned about being labeled an engineer. I'm concerned that I'm going to be more engineer-y than you want, I think.
Even when you're labeled as an engineer?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. There's way more to NLU than anyone knows, unless you come from the inside out. And then it's like, oh, holy shit. So everything you guys do is by design? Yes, everything. And for some reason, some people don't like that. It's almost like adding value is somehow less altruistic when you have a reason behind it. You know?
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's not true, because when you grow and scale a business, the purpose of the business is adding value and spreading self-improvement and helping people reach their goals and dreams. But for some reason, when you do that by design, it almost taints it for some people. It's weird. I don't know. What it comes down to, I think, is acceptance and belonging. I feel like last night triggered my lack of belonging. Because we're in a group of podcasters. There's 11 of them, and Amy, Kevin, and I. And all of us have podcasted. Amy used to have a podcast as well. And I think for me, I was very exposed in terms of how different I think and how different I am. And I don't know why, but that triggers me so much. It's almost like I'm going to be not accepted here. I'm not accepted here. Like, I'm the different one. I'm the one who's different.
Yeah.
And now that's highlighted.
Yeah. Even in the place where you're supposed to be the most accepted, you're not. Or you don't necessarily feel it. You feel exposed to the fact that you might not be. Yeah.
And if anything, I'm actually dialing down, whereas it's actually much more than even this. If you think this is too intense, I mean, there's a whole nother level of intensity in the way I actually think and feel and believe. So to bring this back to the listeners and the viewers, everyone is fearful. You're just fearful of very different things. And the reason why I asked you the rating from 0 to 10, you said it was a 6. That means you need level 7 courage.
Yep. And that's the thought in today's episode. It's not, courage is not the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And the thought is, today what a 6 is, that 6 eventually is a 5. And then that 5 is eventually a 4. And then Alan and I jumping on here, on a scale of 0 to 10, how nervous were you doing this episode?
If last night's group coaching session was a 4, this would be like a 2 or a 1?
And that's...
Yeah, probably a 1.
Same. And that's the goal. And I remember in the beginning, I was super nervous.
Yeah.
Even for
but
these.
The weird thing is that you didn't share that.
No.
So like last night, again, I was uncomfortable and I just owned it. And I said, I'm getting very red. And I pointed out my neck. I also have these really bright lights, so I look even more red. But I wonder to myself if other people, when they're uncomfortable, are saying it. So for example, you in the beginning, you said you were super nervous now, but at the beginning, when you first interviewed me, I was Kevin's first guest on the Hyperconscious podcast, long before we became Next Level University. But you didn't tell me you were nervous.
I wonder if I even knew I was, or if it was just ego.
Yeah, the ego protects us from facing the hard realities of life. And unfortunately, until you face and accept that you are scared, you kind of can't.
It deludes you.
Get to the next level. Yeah, it totally does.
Because I could have done it. I could have done it today. I very easily could have just said, well, this doesn't matter. It's not, whatever. It's not, no matter what, it's going to be fine.
What's the downside of that?
You don't use the fear as a constructive tool. And my guess is it won't go as good as it possibly could go. I'm not saying it'll go terrible, but I'm willing to bet it probably wouldn't go as good as humanly possible. Which, I mean, that's kind of what you're aiming for. Sometimes as good as humanly possible is just doing it.
What is the source of your fear in this case? Like, what's the root of it?
Probably disappointment. Yeah, I'm always afraid somebody is going to get something different than what they expected. In like a disappointed way. It's like, I was really hoping it was going to be better.
Okay. What's underneath that? Like, why? If you disappoint someone, that means this is called Socratic questioning. I wish I had said this on the episode, because we did an episode where I literally unpacked, well, what does that mean? And what does that mean? And what does that mean? This is a couple episodes ago. And by the way, I did reach out to that client and got permission for all of that to happen, even though it was anonymous. Sometimes I need reassurance here because that was deep. But it's called Socratic questioning, which is, what does that mean? So let's say you disappointed Marcus. What would that mean?
I'm not good at this, probably, even though, I'm not good at this.
And what would that mean?
This whole thing is a fucking lie. Honestly. Yeah. This whole thing is a lie.
This was a big breakthrough for me. If this is uncomfortable, I apologize, Kev. In group coaching, I think we've done this long enough, you and me, to where we kind of get it. I, in real time, had a moment of I'm sharing from the inside out how we've built NLU, and most of that was by my design. And Kevin is, the contrast between Kevin and I is getting highlighted, which makes him a little bit insecure, which makes me really insecure. And then there's a few people in the room, one in particular who I think was also energetically insecure. Everyone kind of was uncomfortable a little bit. You could feel it in the room. It was heavy. Yeah. It was heavy energy. And the reason why is because I think we're all insecure. I'm insecure about other people's insecurity. And so, particularly with men, insecure men, for me, I can feel their energy and it makes me insecure. And then I'll either ego up to protect myself or I'll go docile like a whipped dog. And I try really hard to stay centered and just be vulnerable. And that's why I was just like, listen, I'm red. I know this is a lot. And I wonder, do I even need to do that? Should I just hammer through it? I told Kev this recently, and I'll bring everyone behind the scenes. I said, I don't want you to... I want feedback, constructive feedback on whether or not I'm toxic. Because the truth of the matter is I have a very intense energy. I'm a very intense human being. And if anything, I'm actually tempering it quite a bit. But I don't want to be toxic. I want to be truthful, but I don't want to be toxic. And I do think that a lot of the world's content is either on the toxic, masculine, overly intense side, or toxic, super lighthearted, warm and fluffy. And none of that is actually that constructive, because no, overly affirming content is not actually going to help you change, because the things that need to change are the things that need to be looked at in the mirrors, and insecurity and challenge it. And you do need courage, and you're not going to build courage unless you admit you're afraid, and you're not going to admit you're afraid unless you actually face what you're afraid of, which you're not going to do if I'm just saying, oh, it's all going to work out regardless of what you do. But on the other end of that, it's very toxic. So I told Kev, I want you to help me understand if and when what I say is toxic. And other than that, I think I just need to lean into all of who I am. And hopefully that's a good thing. But for anyone out there, courage for me, social courage, is the hardest thing in the world. Courage of doing things I'm afraid of, resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, apply to the job, send the email. I feel like that stuff works for me. I don't feel super afraid of most of that. But what I do feel fearful of is being ostracized or villainized or attacked. I guess what it comes down to is I think I'm easily villainized. And I told Emilia this. I said, there's someone I know who kind of hates me. And she said, he hates himself. He doesn't hate you. He just hates himself. And try your best not to personalize that. And she knows when she says that, easier said than done, right? I mean, if anyone out there has ever been hated when you feel like you didn't deserve it, or treated unjustly when you feel like you don't deserve it, when you're just being yourself, I mean, it's oh yeah, just get over it. It's like, oh, okay, thanks so much. However, I'm trying really hard to not personalize it, because for someone in the past like you, Kev, who was insecure around really competent people, if you did ego up and villainize, which you didn't, fortunately, the other person is used to that, and it doesn't feel good. And I have a lot of empathy for people like Marcus, who probably have been villainized a lot for literally what's almost no fucking reason, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say probably.
Yeah.
Well, it's helped.
And
It's helped me a ton. I mentioned this on an episode. I don't know. This was probably months ago. Excuse me. One of our clients is beautiful and intelligent and successful and well-spoken and well-studied and well-researched and has a bunch of certifications and a bunch of degrees, and she was kind of riding the struggle bus, and her and I were talking, and she's like, I just don't understand why nobody wants to see me win. It's like, because you already look like you've won at everything. That's why. Yeah. Unfortunately.
I empathize with that 10 out of 10.
Well, it helped me understand.
10 out of 10.
I said, I've seen that with Alan for so long, right? That's something I never understood before. But now it's easier to see, at least. At least there's the type of human who seems like they have it all together. And what's courageous for them. You heard the quote, if you're going to go do a speech, imagine the audience is naked. Imagine everybody is naked. You ever heard that before? Mm-hmm. Or in their underwear or whatever, if you don't want to see their dirty bits. I think the reason people are saying that is because just imagine that they're as insecure as you are. Because they are. Just not in the way that you think. It's something else.
Hello, NLU listener. Thank you, as always, for listening to Next Level University. Real quick, I just want to jump in and let you know about the Next Level Dreamliner. This is a journal that I use every single day. Achieve your dreams 90 days at a time. It breaks down your dreams into goals, milestones, and daily habits. We hope you enjoy it. The link will be in the show notes. That person you're referring to, that the degrees and all that stuff.
Yes.
The thing is they actually are that put together.
She's more dialed in than I am, for sure.
Well, you know how people say things like, well, everyone's a mess behind the scenes. The truth is, that person probably thinks she's a nightmare. And she's a mess. She thinks she's a mess.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm a mess. Straight up disaster. But here's the thing. People personalize that because they think, well, if you think you're out of shape and you think you're a mess, then what do you think of me? I do think that some of you out there watching or listening could button up a bit, could dial in. It's not personal. It's me versus my potential. That person is comparing to her potential. And what I've come to empathize with is people who aren't comparing to their potential because maybe they can't imagine it. It's really helped me understand, so your comparison set is others. Your comparison set is not. I never had empathy to the extent I do now for people who can't visualize their own bigger, better, brighter future because they don't have the self-belief part. Because everyone in the past always acted like they believed in themselves. Like, people act. I have one client of mine who's a therapist, and she works with many of my clients, and she said, Alan, you got to understand, the version of her you're coaching is different than the version of her that's behind the scenes. Because she's mirroring you. And it's so we all have different parts of ourselves. So if Kevin has a peak performing part, that's naturally going to amplify around Marcus.
Yep.
But that's not who you really are. But that's the only version of you that Marcus ever sees.
Yep.
And I don't know what level of authentic that actually is. And so we're all sort of socially mirroring and matching each other and triggering each other's insecurities unintentionally without knowing it. And once you learn that, you can start to really work on, like, going into last night's coaching session, I wasn't insecure because I've never taught this before. I know I can teach it. I'm insecure because this is going to be a really big mirror for anyone who hasn't reverse engineered the next 30 years.
Yeah, which is just not most people. Right, realistically. I saw, this was a breakthrough for me. This is like we've talked about it a million times, and it's going to seem like it's common sense, and it is, but it also isn't. It's the way I'm looking at it is different. I saw 2 videos that were just the polar opposites of each other. It was wonderful. One was Andy Frisella, and he said something along, and again, I'm not villainizing. I'll finish the thought. He said something along the lines of, F setting small goals. If you really want to make a big difference, you have to set big goals. And that is true.
If you have high self-belief.
If you have high self-belief, which he very clearly does. Cool.
Yeah, he does. The thing is, he doesn't know he does.
I don't think most people do.
I didn't until you.
I don't think most people know. I don't think, just like I assumed everybody had low self-belief. This is the way, how can anybody...
You thought I had low self-belief?
I didn't think it was as high as it is. Freak was that? I didn't think it was as high as it. Then there was a podcast that you and I have both been on, and he did this little satire skit. It was really funny. And it was something along the lines of, as long as you believe it and you grind your face off and this, and he had like a producer recording it, and he's like, dude, you're only 5 episodes in. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. It was just really cool how it was,
nice.
It was 2 ends of, kind of both ends of the spectrum. But here's the thing. When I first started this, I would resonate with that Andy Frisella content because I didn't know that I had low self-belief. So I would pretend that's what I needed, when in reality, that's not what I needed. Not at the beginning.
What did you need?
I think I needed somebody to just say, Kev, just try it. Just throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. Just try. Order the mic and then download the thing and just talk into it for a while and see what happens. I think that, because I wouldn't have naturally accomplished this unless I partnered with you. It wouldn't happen. I'm not wired that way.
Yeah.
So even at this point, if I was by myself, I still don't know if that content would resonate with me.
I just looked
but
down
now,
when you said that. I wonder if I have shame around that. That's so interesting.
You definitely do. Yeah, I think you definitely do, because you usually get red when I say that. You have faces that you make when I say stuff. Like, you're getting very red right now. You get. I'm sorry to highlight.
No, you're okay. We're good. Yeah, we're good.
You do this like intense stare when you look at me. You're like, and I can usually, I can usually tell. It's like, this is uncomfortable.
How do I unlock that, man? It's the truth, but
you lean into
it's uncomfortable.
Will some people villainize you for it? Yes, but I won't. And I think at the end of the day, do I think that's what matters most? Easier said than done. But I'm not going to villainize you for it. And if I don't villainize you for it, nobody else should get the right to villainize you for it either. But again, easier said than done.
Yeah.
You ever thought of just,
You
ever thought of just like not being offended by what people, you ever thought of just like not caring?
Yeah, I considered it.
Does it work? No.
I considered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked pretty well when I pretended I didn't care about much.
Yeah. And booze helps.
Yeah.
Booze is helpful. For sure, too.
It did help. We don't talk about this. I know we're off the rails a little bit. I know we got to go soon. But I had a time in my life that I don't talk about that often that I think is important to talk about. I call it my let it ride time. There was a time in my life where I opted out. I opted out of caring. And I was like partying. And I remember thinking to myself, you know what? I'm just going to not give a shit. I'm just going to let it ride. Let's party. Let's do it. You know how freaking unfulfilled I was? It was fun. I remember at one point I was day drinking. And I had a pint in my pocket. We were down the Cape. It was 4th of July. And we were mini golfing. And I was day drinking. Sounds like a blast.
It does sound like a blast.
And honestly, the truth is, here's the real truth. It was a blast. But on the surface, it was fun. And at the time, it was fun. But I didn't like my life. And I wasn't proud of myself. So while my life was awesome, money, beautiful girlfriend, I mean, just having a blast down the Cape with all my buddies and their girlfriends. I mean, we had a fucking blast. Straight up. It was awesome. However, I was out of shape. I wasn't getting in any better shape. I was drinking too much and too often, and the jokes were great and all that, but I was hungover sometime. And I remember the time when I sort of gave up. There was a short time in my life where I kind of gave up. Now let's contrast this with a time in my life where I really felt like I was reaching my potential. You can even hear it in my voice how excited I get when I think about this. When I was in college, I quit drinking for like a 3-month period. And I told you this story before, Kev, but it's been a long time. I went to the GNC. I went to a bodybuilding supplement store. And the dude, now I realize the dude behind the counter was definitely on steroids. 100%. You ever go to GNC and you ask, hey, what are you taking?
Just this here, this protein here.
Yeah, this protein, C4, a little creatine, not a big deal. But I remember this dude was jacked 6 ways to Tuesday, and he was stud 6'4", just massive. And I remember asking, like, what do you do? And I went and I got creatine, I got C4 was one of the pre-workouts and supplement, protein, casein versus regular, all this stuff, whey protein. And I lifted and I didn't drink for 3 months.
Well, didn't he ask you about the drinking? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, later. That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting to. So I go back because my supplements ran out, obviously 3 months. So you got to go re-up it. It's in Millbury, Massachusetts. And I tell him, I said, I made more progress in the last 3 months than I've ever made in my entire life. Like, this is the first time in my life where I felt somewhat jacked. And in hindsight, I still was not. But again, it's all relative. And at WPI engineering school, I was jacked. Okay? Seriously. So I felt good. I felt really good about my body. I quit drinking. I remember I was pouring water into my beer cans because I was so sick of being questioned. And I made everyone uncomfortable because no one wants to be the sober one. No one wants to talk to the sober kid at the frat party, right? So whatever. And so I'm hydrating with a freaking beer can. And I go back to GNC and I talk to him and I said, what do you think it was? Is it the casein? Is it the whey protein? Is it the C4 or is it the creatine? Like, I made more progress in the last 3 months than I've ever made. And he said, well, what else? What else? And I said, well, I quit drinking. I stopped drinking. I haven't drank in like 3 months. This is the longest I've gone without drinking in years. I mean, I'm a college student. He's like, dude, it's that. It's 100% that. What he should have said is, I don't drink either, which he did say, but I'm also running tests and a lot of steroids. But the point I'm making is, I made so much progress when I wasn't boozing. And I remember feeling so good about myself. That's actually when I met my ex-girlfriend, Courtney. That's when so many things were just going well. I was in my master's program. I was crushing it in business. And so my point of that, rather than talking about me for 5 minutes here, my point of that is there was a time in my life where I kind of opted out. I didn't really, I tried to let it ride. I tried to say, you know what, screw this reach my potential thing. Screw this achievement thing. I'm just going to have fun. Everyone else seems like they're having so much fun. Let me just have fun. That didn't work for me at all. Like, it was fun and I had a blast, but I remember deep down I was so unfulfilled. And so my point for everyone out there watching or listening is I didn't have the courage to say, you know what, Alan, you're never gonna be fulfilled if you don't start working on yourself. You're never going to be fulfilled if you don't quit drinking. You're never going to be fulfilled if you don't start getting your act together. And I think that you and I sometimes, me more than you, we have our act together so much in comparison to what we used to, that sometimes I think I forget how off the fucking rails I was at one point in my life. Because I coach a 25-year-old who's way more dialed in than I was at 25. And I just think it's really cool to remind everyone that you don't got to be perfect, but you got to have the courage to own it. If you don't want to be 10 out of 10 dialed in, don't. Have the courage to own that. If you do want to be and you're living a lie like I was, it's never going to fulfill you. Trust me, I tried.
One of my favorite things ever when I go on an interview is when the person just says, I'm super nervous. It's like one of my favorite things in the world. I love that. Love it. I'll never look at somebody different for that. If anything, if I am going to look at them in a different way, it's going to be a more positive light. Because at least, cool, let's work through it. We'll work through it together. I'm going to do my best to make this as easy as humanly possible. I'm going to make you feel loved and supported and guided, and it's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. I very much appreciate. Somebody said that to me last week, and I said, I care way more about the person than, I care way more about you as a human than how many episodes you have or any of that. If you're a good human, I'm with it. I will get lost with you. in conversation. If you're a good human. If you're not, I don't really care about much else, especially at this point.
Well, I would define not a good human as a toxic bully.
Yeah.
Yeah, toxic bully.
Yeah.
And
you're either
unfortunately,
good for
there's
the
a lot
world.
of those.
You're either good for the world or you're not. I don't know if there's any. Did you ever? This would be a quick bodybuilding flashback, and then we'll get out of here. Did you ever take Cell Tech? Was that before your days?
Yeah, I didn't. I did C4.
C4.
That was Cellucor or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So Cell Tech. I was working at.
Some shady supplements back in the day.
Yeah, I was literally going to Google it. I think this was like 2009, 10. This was 15 years ago almost. There was definitely some illegal shit in that. I mean, you could go to GNC. I mean, nobody really ordered much on the internet at that point. You could go to GNC. You could get a big 5-pound tub for $50 or whatever it was, and everything was legal. It was all legal. And I remember when I took that, one summer I got fucking jacked. I was jacked. My traps. So for those who don't know what the traps are, it's the muscle that connects from your shoulder to your neck. They were massive. I became a man after taking Cell Tech. And then I think it came out eventually where it was like, yeah, there was some stuff in there that wasn't supposed to be in there. So I've never taken steroids, but Cell Tech, whatever they had, whatever was in Cell Tech back in the day, I don't know. But me and my buddy would go to the gym. I would work 11 to 7 at the hospital. This is when I was working at the hospital. Then I would go meet my buddy at Gold's Gym.
Gold's
Gym
OG.
In Milford. You ever been to the one in Milford, Mass?
I've never been. I just know Gold's Gym. It was like the OG bodybuilding.
That was the best gym in the area at the time. It was massive. There was a sauna. It was awesome.
Nice.
And we would go work out for a couple hours. We'd go sit in the sauna, do push-ups and sit-ups and squats until we thought we were going to pass out. And that was it. Simpler times back then.
Yeah, it was simpler times, yeah.
Simpler times. Last thing. The thing that you are the most comfortable, familiar, and competent with is probably the thing that requires the least courage. That was always a weird thing. When I would travel for work, I would go to a different gym almost every week. And then I remember thinking about it. I was like, how weird is it that I go to a different gym every week and I don't even think about it? Like, where's the closest gym?
Yeah.
How much is it? That can be a very challenging thing to do if there's any self-consciousness around fitness and exercise.
I had a thought earlier today. We'll go quick because this is about courage, but I had a thought today of we're on camera every day.
And I look like shit right now, for sure. I do.
I would say we could take better care of ourselves.
We need to.
And we're on our way to that.
Yeah.
We need to. But I was thinking to myself, I remember when being on camera was very new.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything good in life is on the other side of courage, for sure. I think everyone's afraid. Two types of people in the world. There's people who are afraid, and then there's liars. I'm being playful, but seriously, everyone's afraid. What I've very much found out in coaching people, we are afraid of very different things. We're not afraid of the same thing. Not everyone's afraid of public speaking, believe it or not. Not everyone's afraid of money. Not everyone's afraid of failing. Not everyone's afraid of failure. I don't feel afraid of failure at all. I fail all the time. I'm definitely afraid of success. And so just understanding yourself and what you're afraid of and what triggers you and what makes you insecure and what you're actually insecure about. Some people are insecure about being more than. Some people are insecure about being less than. Some people are being insecure about being a movie buff. Some people are insecure about the car they drive. Some people are insecure about the home they live in. There's no one who's not insecure. It's just, what are you actually insecure about? And then what is your reaction to that? And how do you lean into courage? Because courage is the universal thing. The fears are different, but courage is the thing we all need.
If you want to continue to lean into courage 7 days a week, make sure you are subscribed on whatever platform you are watching or listening to us on. That way you never miss an opportunity to get to the next level. If you're on Spotify, I think it's follow. If you're on Apple Podcasts, I think it's also follow. And then on YouTube, subscribe, turn on notifications, all of that happy jazz.
So I've changed my framework that I use for coaching, very high level. It's goals, metrics, priorities, habits, skills, and identity. Those are the ones that I have it boiled down to. I've been mentoring for 10 years, coaching for 8, hundreds of individuals, 28 currently. I do weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly, and then I have a couple people who are playfully out of their minds who do twice a week. The amount of time and effort that I've spent helping people be both externally successful and internally fulfilled, which those two together don't come hand in hand often. I've been on both sides. I've been externally successful and wildly unfulfilled. You heard a little bit about that. I've also been super internally fulfilled and wildly unsuccessful externally. So doing them both is actually very difficult. I will help you. Goals, metrics, priorities, skills, habits, and identity. That's the main things that we'll dial in together and so much more. So just reach out. The first one's free.
Dial them in. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Talk to you soon.